When Dr. Eliza Morrow stepped onto the frozen landing site in the Harrow Ridge Mountains, she thought she was chasing Cold War secrets, but what she found was something far older, and still alive. The wind was screaming. Snow blasted across the helicopter's side windows as it descended toward a flat, frozen plateau buried deep in the Harrow Ridge Mountains. It was late February, and temperatures had plunged to -30°C. A wall of snow and white fog blurred the landscape. Inside the chopper, Dr. Eliza Morrow gripped the edge of her seat, her breath fogging in her mask. Across from her sat Marcus Levon, a rugged mountaineer and survival expert, Yana Solis, an icy-eyed Cold War historian from Bulgaria, and Ben Travers, a quiet, tech-obsessed documentarian who hadn't looked up from his camera since they'd left Denver. "This is it," Eliza said, raising her voice over the roar of the blades. "The signal's coming from beneath that ridge. The last active ping came just 3 days ago." Marcus squinted through the window. "Nothing but snow and ice. You sure there's even a lab down there?" Eliza nodded. "Positive. Satellite scans from 1962 show a deep facility. Then, nothing. Until a coded beacon activated last week for the first time in 60 years. The pilot gave a thumbs up and began to lower them onto the surface. The chopper touched down with a gentle thud, blades slicing the storm. They stepped out into the blizzard, packs slung tight, heads bowed. Yana raised her gloved hand and pointed. "There. That old comms tower, it's half buried." Sure enough, an ancient metal antenna stuck out from the snow like the spine of a dead whale. As they approached, a concrete door revealed itself beneath layers of wind-packed snow. Marcus took the lead, using a heat saw to carve around the edges. After 20 minutes of cutting and scraping, the steel door let out a long groan and creaked open. The stale air that rushed out wasn't just cold. It felt wrong. Ben stepped back, camera rolling. "What if something's still alive down there?" Eliza answered without looking. "That's what we're here to find out." The staircase spiraled down into darkness. Their lights flickered against the frost-covered walls. Pipes hung like frozen vines, and faded signs warned. "Property of U.S. Air Force, Project Deep Sleep, top secret." They passed locked doors, cracked glass, and hallways coated in ice. Finally, the corridor opened into a wide room. At the far end stood a massive vault door. Painted across it were black letters, chipped and nearly erased. C-12, Experimental Containment Wing. Marcus tried the wheel, it groaned, then slowly turned. The door creaked open. The cold that hit them wasn't natural. It was surgical, a dead, controlled chill that clung to their bones. In the center of the chamber stood a large rectangular shape, completely frozen over. Ben focused his lens. "Is that a cage?" Eliza stepped forward. "Looks like it." The cage was thick steel, welded with reinforced bars. But more than half of it was entombed in a solid wall of ice, like something had deliberately been sealed. Yana found a cracked control panel with a glowing green indicator light, still pulsing. "This system still has power," she whispered. "After 60 years. Marcus brushed frost off a rusted plaque nearby. The metal flaked, but the engraved words remained. Subject X9, chronostasis status, active. Entry date, March 3, 1962. Age unknown. Notes, termination attempt failed. Containment maintained. "What's chronostasis?" Ben asked. "Stasis through time manipulation," Eliza replied. "It's theoretical. Meant to stop aging completely. The military wanted to preserve soldiers, animals, even prisoners, just freeze them in time." Ben peered into the ice. "And that's when they saw it." Curled inside the cage, trapped in perfect stillness, was a bobcat. Golden fur. Untouched. No decay. Its chest slowly rising and falling, like it was asleep, or waiting. Marcus backed away. That's impossible. Yana whispered, no. It's alive. They stared in stunned silence. Then, all at once, the ice cracked. A jagged line zipped across the front of the block. A second followed. The air shifted. That same low hum began, vibrating through the steel floor. Ben's camera screen glitched. Eliza, he said, what is this thing? I don't know, she replied. But I don't think it was made here. Yana frowned. What do you mean? I mean it was found, maybe even trapped. The cage shuddered. Inside, the bobcat opened its eyes. And they were not animal eyes. They were golden. Deep. Knowing. Eliza took a step back. We need to get out of here. Now. Marcus grabbed his radio. Calling the chopper. But the lights above flickered, then burst. Sparks rained down. The door behind them slammed shut. Ben shouted, we're locked in. The hum grew louder. And the bobcat stood. Not shivering. Not confused. Awake. It stepped forward as the last layer of ice fell away. And it stared directly at them. The room vibrated with a strange pressure, like the air itself had weight. The bobcat stood inside the thawed cage, golden eyes locked on Eliza. Its fur shimmered slightly in the low emergency light, as if reflecting something no one else could see. Marcus raised his ice axe. Back up. Just in case. Eliza shook her head slowly. Don't move. Don't threaten it. The bobcat stepped out of the cage. No fear. No confusion. Each paw touched the steel floor like it had walked this place 1,000 times before. What kind of animal does that? Ben whispered, slowly backing away, camera still rolling. One that remembers, Yana said, eyes wide. It's not just alive, it's aware. Suddenly, the overhead intercom crackled to life, hissing static, then a voice so distorted it barely sounded human. Subject X9, observation phase, resuming. They all froze. Ben stared at the old speaker overhead. That thing's been offline for decades. Eliza spun toward the panel near the cage, now glowing brighter. New data was scrolling on the cracked screen. Vitals stable. Memory retention, 97%. Chrono sync re-established. Environmental response, passive. What is this? Marcus muttered. Eliza moved toward the terminal, trying to process the flood of information. This whole place was meant to keep it in stasis. But something reactivated the system, maybe the beacon we picked up. The bobcat stepped forward again, now only feet away. It didn't growl. It didn't blink. It simply stared. Then, it did something no one expected. It sat down, calmly. And closed its eyes. Like it was waiting for them to understand. Yana crouched slowly, pulling out a folded piece of yellowed paper from her backpack. I found this in a retired military officer's files. It mentioned something called the ice curse, linked to a creature the government found frozen in Siberia back in 1961. They moved it here after locals claimed it could walk through time. Eliza looked at her, stunned. That's a legend. Folklore. Yana glanced at the bobcat. Is it? The room was silent, except for the faint hum still vibrating through the floor. Ben finally stepped closer, camera low. If it hasn't aged in 60 years, and it remembers everything, then it must have seen who brought it here. Who froze it? The bobcat opened its eyes. It blinked once. Then turned its head toward the back of the room. There, half covered in collapsed ceiling and twisted pipes, was a sealed vault door. Without a word, the team moved toward it. Marcus cleared some debris with his axe while Ben used a crowbar to pry open a jammed latch. The metal door creaked open with an eerie metallic sigh. Inside, was a control room. Frozen consoles. Dead monitors. And walls covered in old photos, notes, and one large black and white image pinned at the center. A group of scientists. Standing in front of the very same cage. The bobcat frozen behind them. But the strangest part. Eliza's face was in the photo. She staggered back. No, that's not possible. Yana snatched the photo. It looks exactly like you. Ben pointed at the bottom corner. Date stamped, March 4, 1962. Marcus stepped beside her. Maybe it's a relative. But Eliza's hands were shaking. I don't have any ancestors who worked in classified projects. My family was in California. None of this makes sense. The bobcat entered the room behind them, silent, graceful. It stared at the photo. Then looked back at Eliza. And blinked. As if confirming it. Eliza walked to the wall and examined a folder pinned beneath the photo. Inside were typed reports. She flipped through them. Subject X9 exhibits cyclical memory loops when shown visual stimuli. Subject identifies select researchers as familiar even if newly introduced. Subject appears to project memory patterns onto others. What if, Eliza whispered, it's not just frozen in time, but it can see through it. Yana nodded slowly. Maybe that's how it remembers you. Maybe you were never here, but it thinks you were. Ben backed up. Or maybe, you will be. The bobcat suddenly turned again. This time, it moved toward a hidden service shaft, an old tunnel covered in frost. Its tail flicked, as if motioning them to follow. Where is it going? Marcus asked. I don't know, Eliza said, already moving after it. But I think it's trying to show us something. They followed the bobcat through the tunnel, using headlamps to cut through the dark. The passage twisted downward, deeper into the mountain. Pipes dripped. Ice cracked under their boots. Finally, they reached a large chamber, circular and dome-shaped, with a strange metallic platform in the center. The walls were lined with cables and strange coils, now dormant. At the center was a raised metal pad. On it, another control panel, cracked but still glowing faintly. Marcus stepped forward and brushed away frost. One word blinked on the screen. Recall. Recall what? He asked. Yana stepped closer, reading aloud from a wall plaque. Chrono Relay Hub, Phase Transfer Station. Authorized use only. Subject-bound recall program in progress. Eliza's eyes widened. This is a temporal anchor. This is where they tried to push time backward. This whole place wasn't just about preserving the bobcat, it was about using it as a key. Ben whispered, key to what? Before anyone could answer, the bobcat stepped onto the platform. A ring of lights flashed. The console lit up. The ground hummed again, this time much louder. The screen changed. Recall sequence initiated. The bobcat looked back at them one last time. Then, everything went white. When Eliza opened her eyes, she was standing in a jungle. Warm air. Humid. Thick vines curled around enormous trees. The others were beside her, staggered, confused. But the bobcat was gone. And in the distance, from the jungle canopy, came a roar. The roar echoed through the trees like thunder through the bones of the earth. Eliza stumbled backward, brushing damp vines from her jacket. Her boots sank slightly into soft, mossy ground. The air was warm, unnaturally warm, and thick with buzzing insects, the cry of unseen birds, and the distant howls of creatures she couldn't name. Ben turned in circles, camera dangling from his hand. "Where are we?" "This isn't the mountain," Yana said, voice low. "No kidding," Marcus muttered, hand instinctively resting on the handle of his climbing axe. Eliza stood still, listening. "It's not just a jungle, it feels ancient." A shadow passed overhead. They all looked up, and froze. Above the canopy soared a massive bird-like creature, its leathery wings casting shade as it screeched into the sky. Not a hawk. Not an eagle. Something much older. Marcus exhaled sharply. "Was that a pterodactyl?" Ben whispered, "That bobcat didn't just move through time, it took us with it." They pushed deeper into the jungle, the humid air pressing against their skin like wet cloth. The bobcat was nowhere to be seen. But the deeper they went, the stranger things became. Ferns taller than trucks. Footprints the size of manhole covers. Trees as wide as cabins. And then, they found the ruins. Carved stone pillars, wrapped in vines, jutting from the earth like broken teeth. Markings covered the surface, circles, spirals, and symbols none of them could recognize. "This isn't just prehistoric," Yana whispered. "This is intelligent. Something lived here. Built things." Ben adjusted his camera, filming everything. "So the bobcat led us through time and space. It wanted us to find this." Eliza walked to the center of the ruins. A stone platform sat at the heart, covered in moss. On it, a carved image, a cat-like creature, eyes glowing, surrounded by humans kneeling in worship. She whispered, "They knew about it." Marcus stepped back, scanning the trees. "So what is it? Some kind of ancient god?" "No," Yana said. "Something worse. Something outside time. Maybe it's been passing through ages for centuries, and those people tried to trap it here." Eliza's voice was barely audible. "And maybe the military found it frozen in ice, thinking it was just an animal. But it's not." Suddenly, the trees ahead rattled violently. A massive shadow stepped forward, a predator. It wasn't the bobcat. This was a giant cat-like creature, black as midnight, with glowing red eyes and saber-like fangs. It snarled, and charged. "Move!" Marcus yelled. They dove aside as the beast lunged, claws ripping through the stone. Ben scrambled for cover, camera forgotten. Eliza rolled behind a pillar, heart hammering. The creature roared again and lunged toward Yana, until something flashed between them. A streak of gold. The bobcat. It appeared out of nowhere, slamming into the larger beast's flank. The two animals clashed, snarling, clawing, tumbling into the underbrush. "Come on!" Marcus shouted. "Now's our chance." They sprinted through the ruins, dodging vines and crumbling statues. The ground shook behind them as the fight continued. Trees snapped. Stones crumbled. And then, silence. They reached a clearing. In the middle stood a stone archway glowing with faint blue light. Ben gasped, "That's a portal. It's like the one under the lab." "But where does it go?" Yana asked. Eliza stepped forward. "Only one way to find out." But just as they approached, the bobcat appeared again, limping, bloodied, but alive. It looked at them. Then back at the jungle. Its eyes were different now. Softer. Almost tired. Eliza crouched slowly. You brought us here to show us something, didn't you? To stop something. The bobcat blinked. Ben stepped forward. But what are you? The bobcat turned away, limped to the side of the archway, and disappeared. Not through the portal. It simply faded, like a memory. The arch began to glow brighter. Wind rushed in, spinning leaves and dust. The hum returned, low, heavy, like thunder inside their chests. Yana stepped to Eliza's side. Wherever this leads. I think we have to follow. That creature brought us here for a reason. Eliza nodded. To see what it was. What it still is. Ben stared into the glow. Do we even have a choice? Marcus exhaled, tightening his pack. Let's finish this. Together, they stepped through. A moment of weightlessness. Then the cold slammed into them like a wall. They were back. Back in the lab. The cage was empty. The control panels, dark. No hum. No lights. Dust settled gently in the air. Everything looked older. More decayed. Eliza glanced around. Is it the same day? Yana checked her watch. Then her satellite phone. No signal. No GPS. Nothing. Ben's camera had stopped recording. The battery, full moments ago, was now drained. Marcus walked to the doorway. The snowstorm outside, it's gone. Eliza turned back to the cage. And found something resting there. A paw print. But not pressed into dust or snow. Carved, into the steel. Ben lifted his camera, despite its dead screen. He whispered, did it die? Or did it just, leave again? Eliza didn't answer. Her hand traced the paw print gently. It exists where time doesn't rule. It showed us a piece of its journey. And now it's gone. But why us? Yana asked. Why take us? Marcus shrugged. Maybe we were the only ones who listened. They left the lab in silence, hiking out as the sky began to darken. None of them said a word until they reached the ridge. As the helicopter came into view, Eliza looked back. And high on a snowy outcrop, barely visible against the white, stood a silhouette. Feline. Still. Watching. A week had passed since they returned from the mountain. No one spoke much during the flight back. The government took the footage. Their equipment disappeared. No press. No statements. Just silence. And the team? They scattered. Marcus went back to Alaska. Yana disappeared to a research facility in Austria. Ben stopped uploading videos entirely. Only Eliza stayed close to the mountain. Because she knew, it wasn't over. Eliza sat alone at her small cabin on the edge of Harrow Ridge. Outside, snow blanketed the trees. The wind howled the same way it had the day they arrived. She kept the broken camera on her desk, next to a cup of cold coffee and pages of notes she'd written from memory. Every night, she dreamed of the jungle. Of the bobcat's golden eyes. Of the ancient ruins. But it wasn't fear that kept her awake. It was a feeling. That the bobcat hadn't chosen her by accident. That evening, as she stared at the carved paw print she'd traced into a leather notebook, her satellite phone buzzed. A blocked number. She answered. Dr. Morrow, came a deep voice. This is Special Agent Rourke. We need to speak. Now. She hesitated. About the lab? About what came out of it? Static crackled. We've had 2 more sightings. Both in different time zones. One in a desert. The other, in an ancient ruin that shouldn't exist anymore. Eliza's heart raced. The Bobcat? We're not sure. But each place had one thing in common, deep claw marks. And a residual field of energy identical to what we measured in the Harrow Ridge lab. She stood slowly. It's moving again. Yes, Rourke said. But the strange part is, it's not alone anymore. Eliza's breath caught. What do you mean? Another moment of static. Whatever it is, it's waking others. Things we never catalogued. Creatures frozen in time, or maybe outside of it. He paused. And we think you're the only one it trusted. The only one it showed the full memory to. That night, she returned to the mountain. Snow fell in quiet sheets, whispering through the pines. She found the old entrance, now sealed by concrete and warning signs. But Eliza didn't need to go in. She already felt it, the presence. From the ridge above, she saw them. Not just one bobcat now. 3. All glowing faintly under the moonlight. One sat tall and still, the same golden-eyed creature from before. The other two, smaller, younger, but with the same impossible stillness. They weren't hunting. They were watching. Waiting. Eliza stepped forward through the snow. She didn't speak. Just knelt in the clearing, eyes locked with the golden one. It blinked. A sound moved through the trees. Not a growl. Not a cry. A hum. Familiar. Low. Steady. Deep in her chest. A vibration that felt like time itself. She closed her eyes, and suddenly, her mind filled with flashes. Not memories. Not visions. Timelines. She saw the Cold War lab again. But this time, she wasn't observing. She was in it. Wearing a white coat. Standing beside the cage. Talking to a team of scientists. Laughing. Then, an explosion. Panic. A failed test. And the golden bobcat, barely older than a kitten, inside the chamber. She watched herself reach for the emergency switch. And freeze it. She had done it. Not someone like her. Her. 60 years ago. Her eyes snapped open. The bobcat stood before her now, closer than before. It pressed its paw gently into the snow. A message. I remember you. And she understood. It wasn't angry. It wasn't seeking revenge. It had been waiting, for someone to remember. To finish what was started. To witness. To warn. The others behind it turned and walked away into the forest. But the golden one stayed. For one last moment. Then it, too, vanished into the trees. Leaving behind only silence. And a pattern in the snow, for perfectly shaped paw prints, encircling hers. Weeks passed. Eliza told no one. Not the government. Not even her team. She returned to her cabin, where she wrote everything down. Every detail. Every memory. Not as a report, but as a record. A story. Because someone, someday, would need to know. 10 years later. A young girl named Lila stumbled across a strange journal buried in a library basement during a snowstorm. It was old. Water-stained. The leather was cracked, and the title on the front had nearly faded. But one symbol remained clear. A golden paw print. Inside were sketches of strange portals, jungle ruins, time coils, and a single line underlined 3 times. It walks between moments. Not a god. Not a monster. Just, A reminder that time is not ours to own. At the bottom of the last page was a signature. Dr. Eliza Morrow. Harrow Ridge. 2035. Lila looked up, snow falling gently outside. And through the frost-covered window, just beyond the trees, she saw it. A golden-eyed bobcat. Still watching. Still remembering.